What's up, Digitalog fam? It is season 2 of the LZK Lessons Learned. Super excited. We're about 5 episodes in. This is episode 26. Super excited because I have my friends Gaby and Alex of Girls Gone Boss. But before we go into introducing y'all, I just want to say, hope you guys are staying safe and creative at home. Thank you for all the support. If you haven't yet, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to all the episodes because these are amazing stories of these incredible creatives. But before I start, I just also want to say thank you. It's been obviously an incredible year last year, but excited to really kick things off for 2021 and appreciate everyone supporting the Digitalog community. So let's get right into it. Gaby and Alex, what's up?
Hi.
Happy New Year.
How are you?
Good. So for context, Gaby, we connected because you spoke at a Music Career Summit. But before we go into that, how are you and the family? And same question for you, Alex.
Thank you for having us, Drew. We're so excited to be here. Hello, everyone listening. Actually, it was great. I had 2 weeks off from work.
Let's
Um,
go.
it was really deserving because, this whole 2020 year was very draining on everyone, and especially the music community. We made the impossible possible during such a pivoting year for everyone. So I was just like, I really need to disconnect. And I really took on those 2 weeks to really just kind of service my mental health and come back even stronger. So
Yeah, definitely. Mental health is definitely a big theme for last year. I love to hear that. And how about you, Alex?
Well,
How was
for
your holiday?
it was good, but I was not able to take any time off.
Oh no.
Production world that I work in, it's nonstop. So we had a few productions that we had to get through the end of the year. But I am gonna be taking off some time in about 2 weeks. I'm gonna have a 1-year-old in 2 weeks, so I'm taking some time off to celebrate her.
Wow.
Yeah, everything's
Congrats.
great. Yeah, and I'm excited, so excited for 2021 and to kickstart the year and bring in all the positivity the year I know is going to have for us.
Want to introduce yourself to the Digitalog community in terms of what you guys do in terms of your day to day, and just a little, maybe just a description about Girls Gone Boss. So I'll kick it off with you, Gaby. You want to just kind of introduce yourself, and then y'all can talk about Girls Gone Boss for a second.
sure. So my name's Gabby. So I've been in the music industry for now 16 years, going on 17. And I work in the music industry, particularly at a record label. And so I am working in marketing. I am a senior label manager at Warner Music Latina, where I oversee the marketing for a roster of artists, including some urban artists like Justin Quiles, Ione Lennox. I've worked with various artists as well, like in the general market when I used to do more of the international marketing that I initially started doing. And we created Girls Gone Boss because we felt we really wanted to service those women coming up. Alex and I worked together at MTV. I worked there for a very long time, so did she. And growing up and being in business and in the entertainment business, we didn't have like a community of or like really anybody to kind of like we can go to mentorship wise. We had great mentors, unfortunately not many women mentors, but we just didn't have the resources like they're so readily available now. So we wanted to just create a community to help, educate and empower all those amazing women out there that want to do big things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the entertainment industry, but we kind of call ourselves the virtual mentors, because we just want to
Love that.
talk to all women from different walks of life and create tools for our listeners so that they can empower themselves.
I love that. And how about you, Alex?
Yeah, Gabby covered that very well in terms of Girls Gone Boss. I am a production creative manager. Right now, I'm working at Zumba Fitness. I've been there for a little bit over a year now. I manage the video production and content department for them. We do a lot of productions, about 6 productions a month. So it's a heavy workload prior to Zumba. I was at Viacom for MTV and Paramount, VH1, and Tres for about 16 years. And I did start my career a little bit earlier than Gaby. I didn't finish college, so I started it a little bit earlier. So now I'm on my 20th year of my career.
Wow.
And
Congrats.
I know,
Let's go.
And
insane,
you're 21. Hello.
right? Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I love the production world, and the creative production world is my space. It's where I've always been. I manage creatives, so I'm the one that oversees the producers, sound engineers, editors, animators,
Wow.
copywriters, that type of creatives in the world.
I love that. And we'll go into things later, like managing and delegating and all that in a moment. What was your introduction to just like music and content and creativity? Were you always into the arts and media space when you were young? Were your parents like in those spaces? Because even for me, growing up, I grew up in like a lower middle class immigrant family, Filipino. So their idea of like careers was working in the hospital or the medical field, or finding a corporate job. So the idea of working in the creative field was kind of, it wasn't necessarily spoken about or talked about, but what were some of the things that you were interested in when you were young, and like did that allow you to kind of think out of the box about like what you wanted to do, or what interested you?
My experience is it's the same. So I come from I'm an immigrant to this country. I came at a very young age. My mother I'm from Peru. My mother was a teacher in Peru. My dad was a businessman. He had multiple businesses. He was an author. Once we came to the United States, I don't recall exactly what I wanted to be when I was very little, but I know exactly the day that I decided that I wanted to work in production, and I was 8 years old. And it was when I saw an actual behind the scenes production being done. And that's the day that I told my mom, I want to do what that lady is doing. That's what I want to do. And after that, when I was around 10 years old, the opportunity came where my mom realized that there were magnet schools that catered to the arts. And there was actually broadcasting classes. And she asked me if I wanted to try out. And I did, and I made it. And I got in, and I've been in love with production ever since I was 10 years old. And ever since then, it's just been my career path. So I've always really encouraged parents to listen to their kids and what they want to do. Not necessarily that they're going to stick to it, but it might lead to a lifetime of an amazing career in my opinion, and in what I've experienced. I went to South Miami Middle School for the Arts. From there, high school, which is where I met Gaby. Actually, coincidentally, we were in broadcasting class together. We weren't in the same
Okay.
friends or anything, but we were in class together. We were peers, and then fast forward a few years later, we meet at MTV and we reconnect. And then years later, once again, we build a podcast together. So that's my trajectory. That's what I wanted to do since I was really, really young. So I've always known production was my life.
In my case, I'm also obviously daughter of immigrants, and I came here when I was very little as well. I'm from Nicaragua. And unfortunately, I didn't have the backing of my parents, not because I just think it's lack of knowledge from my mother. She was a single mom. My dad died when I was very young. So her coming to the US, she just was kind of on survival mode, and she had to figure out for us a lot of, just how to get food on the table and etc. So I think my interest was when I was very little as well. I was very much into media, into entertainment and music. And even when I was in elementary school, I was part of the morning news. I always, whether you like share like what's for lunch or what the weather is like, we would rotate different positions. And I was into it and I loved it. And then going to high school, I really was into TV production. I did a lot of the reporting in the high school. I would come out on the news, on the television. And I don't know, it's always been something that I wanted to do. Particularly, I always had an interest in on-camera stuff. I did a bunch of, casting calls and stuff for different entertainment shows. But I never landed that. But I always was like, okay, well, if I don't get on camera, let's figure out how to work the business and behind the scenes, you know? And so I ended up at MTV, and I ended up exactly in the department that I wanted to. And this is where I am today. So I feel like I've always had it in my heart to be here.
It's really interesting because I think there's a common thread, right? We're all come from immigrant families coming here to the country. But also it's really different too, where I think there are two things I really find common where in both of your stories where you found those interests very early.
Mhm.
Um, and I think as kids, and it's funny because a lot of things that we experience now or like why we're doing what we're doing is because of like what we're doing as children or things that we're really interested like really whether it's that like that news show in your case Gabby, and I know with you Alex, whether it's like that like kind of seeing that production behind the scenes and really inspiring you. So for a lot of folks, I think for the parents or future parents, if you see those lights go up for your kids in those eyes and they're really interested, really nurture that, empower them because it starts early on because like they're like the most green. I think they're just like seeing the world with like a really bird's eye view, so I think that's super important.
But I want to
um
mention something just in case there is somebody listening that maybe has pushback, because growing up I did have pushback from my mother.
mhm,
She would tell me, don't go into that. Don't go into that field, that there's no money to make there. Because again, lack of knowledge, she wasn't sure, she was fearful. Maybe she wanted
right.
to be, a doctor or a lawyer, where something that she felt would make a better livelihood. But I pushed back. I said, no, I'm going to go with my heart. So I think it's important to the listeners to also like go with your heart, and I think everything will come. And now obviously she sees that I'm successful and she's like, okay, I fuck with it.
Yeah, trust me, I was it took a while for them to get it. I think I was like only like the last two years, but you love your family, you just keep going. So you talk about like kind of like your crossover, like how y'all met. So what was that kind of interaction when how did you develop your friendship? Because I feel like friendships like that are super special given that they've lasted for so long.
Well, when I met, well, she said we had broadcasting class, but we didn't really talk that much. We were just kind of in the class, and we both hated the teacher, so we had like something in common, but we didn't really mingle with each other. And then forward years later, we're at MTV, and she just started. I had already been there, and she started, and I see her, and I'm like, oh my God, I know you. Like, don't I know you? And then she was like,
Nope.
no. And I was like, really? But I swear to God, I think we had broadcasting class
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And she denied it till the end of day. She was so antisocial about it. And then I don't know what happened. We became so close, and we would have lunch together. I mean, me and Alex are like the opposite, but the same. Like,
Exactly. We
mhm.
complement each other so well, but we're completely polar opposites in their personalities. But you know what? Drew, let me tell you how much Gabby has made me grow personally and brought me out of my shell. Because if it wasn't for Gabby, I guarantee you I would not be the same person that I am today and that you are talking to today. It's honestly because of Gabby, and she's been a big part of like helping my personal growth in my life. So I'm very grateful for Gabby for that. And I tell her that
Oh,
all.
No,
I,
I thank you,
love it.
Alex. No, but honestly, she has shown a lot of growth, especially in the podcast. She was very shy in the beginning. It was very fearful about speaking. Now I'm like, girl, you can do this by yourself. Let me get a break. Let me go to the bathroom. She's good.
Yeah.
I love that. I love how y'all are giving each other your flowers. I mean, that's super important. And the point I'm making is, how the power of friendship, particularly, as you're kind of developing you're trying to find opportunities in these career paths. Because I feel like that's always what I've heard in terms of like people starting in their careers, lack of representation. And did you guys um basically like lean on each other for that support?
Yeah, I think the purpose of putting together the podcast was to we started about 5 years ago. This was when the podcast industry wasn't as saturated. And also, there wasn't a lot of representation of Latinas in business like us. There was a lot of representation of maybe like Caucasian women that were very successful and had empowering messages. And we wanted to have someone that our Latin community or minorities could relate to, or like any brown girl could relate to. And someone that was in business, that it wasn't going to be like this whole, it was just like somebody that we could be for the community on a professional level. We didn't find that. There wasn't enough content with that. But also like women that were Latina, but spoke English and lived Americanized and, you know, lived in the US, but just happened to be Latina. It didn't have to be so like in like the content. We wanted it to be like us. We like to speak in English. We consume things in English. So we wanted to really target those girls in the US, you know, and the world, because we have listeners all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So before that, like, were there, I just want to, because the purpose of this story, I mean, for this podcast is really to showcase kind of the lessons learned. So as you're navigating in different kind of paths in your career, what were like some of the lessons learned and trying to like, because y'all both reconnected in MTV, but how did you get to MTV? Because I feel like those are always like the questions, like, did you get an internship? So the first question is like the transition into the first job, in this case, let's say MTV. And two, what did you learn from just kind of working at MTV that you share in your podcast?
So for me particularly, I just have a story that I want to share with you guys that I don't even know if I have shared it in Girls Gone Boss before, or even with Gaby, but the way that I actually landed at MTV. It's really interesting. So like I mentioned earlier, I had dropped out of school. School was not for me. And school is not for everyone, but I do encourage people to follow their passion. And my parents knew that from a very, very early age for me. So they never, yes, they always wanted me to have an education, but once they realized that I could not continue to go to school, that I was not going to thrive in that type of environment, they accepted the fact that I wanted to just go out and build my career at a very, very early age. So my dad, and I'm going to super outdate myself by saying this, but my dad and I sat down. I was probably 19 years old, and we started looking through the yellow pages. And we looked through all of the production houses, the dubbing houses that there were in Miami down Biscayne Boulevard. And he just said, get in the car. He drove me to every single one of these places. And he made me knock on the door and ask if anybody would be willing to teach me how to edit, how to just not even mentor me, but just sit down with me and explain the industry to me. And through my dad and my mom pushing me to do this is where I was able to build a lot of networking connections, to the point that people started calling me. And trust me, I was a child compared to like the people that I was talking to that were like adults in their 30s and their 40s, and they were experienced. And I think they just saw my drive and my passion, and the fact that I would have my dad drive me over there and knock on the door, or they were giving me opportunities. So they would bring me on set for Home Depot commercials to be a PA, or CNN just to like watch a locked camera, and through those experiences, I was able to build connections that landed me different jobs. I ended up getting a job at Fox Sports as an AD. And I was there for about 2 years. So I was able to build these connections, and then that landed me eventually at MTV. But the caveat with MTV was that they only needed me for 2 weeks to fill in for somebody that was on maternity leave.
Wow.
And once I got in the door, my objective was to talk to and meet as many people as I could, so that I can make a presence, so that I could stay. That was my goal, being there for 2 weeks. I think that anybody else would not have left their previous job, but I just knew in my heart that I wanted to be at MTV so bad, and I would do anything. No job was beneath me at that point, and I became somebody's assistant. And from there, I never left. I didn't leave for 16 years. So that's how I ended up at MTV. So that's an interesting story.
That is. Oh, your dad is a champ. I love him.
Wow. Well, shout out to
Get me out of the
shout out
house.
to dad.
That's the truth.
Shout out to dad for real.
They're
Well,
like, Alex, step
I have
out.
a similar story, but not so much. Like again, I kind of had to just hustle myself and use like the resources that I had. And at the time, I was going to Florida International University here in Miami, and I was doing a bachelor's in journalism. So I used my counselor as somebody as like a resource. So I feel like anybody listening, you have to start thinking like, who do I have in my network that can get me to that first step? Because sometimes we don't know what that step's going to lead you to, but you just need to start looking at your network. So I went to my counselor. I said, hey, I want to start doing internships. Where can I go? And then there was this opportunity at MTV. And I was like, oh my God, I would love to. I mean, MTV is an iconic brand. I grew up on MTV. I've been obsessed with it. And just to be associated with that, I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I landed the internship. And again, the internship was for maybe a semester and nothing happened after that. They didn't have any positions. They didn't have anywhere for me to go, but you just keep going. So what's my next move? All right, I'm going to look for my first job was at CBS in the news department. And I was doing tape, which was the most stressful job I have ever had in my life, when there was tapes that you actually had to stick into the VCR or whatever machine it was while it was live. You had to really pay attention. Yeah, like little beta tapes. Yeah, not even. Nah, the beta tapes was big. They were little. They weren't that.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I hate this. News is not for me. I don't want to know who's dying. I don't want to know about hurricanes. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to keep going. And again, I used what resources do I have? And during that time, there was a lot of job fairs. So I would just go to job fairs, which I don't even know if they have job fairs now. I mean, I think all of it is digital, but I wonder if there's like, well, not with COVID, but back then it was a thing. You would go to like a place and there was tables and different companies were there and you would give your resume out. And in that table, one of the tables, the MTV person was there, one of the HR person. And she remembered me from my internship. And she was like, and I was like, oh my God, I'm here. I really am interested in looking for a position. She's like, you know what? I remember you. I may have something for you. And then that's how I landed my first paying job, because at that time internships didn't pay you. And I worked for an executive producer for VH1. And I was his executive assistant. And again, it was only temporary. It was like a 3-month job. And I fostered that relationship with the HR representative, which she's amazing, Maria. And she really took us under her wing because she would find us our next gig. Once one gig was over, she would like shift us into another department. I feel that I was there 11 years and I worked in like 7 or 8 different departments till I really landed in the department that I really liked. So I think it was an amazing opportunity for me to also find my niche and to find what I was good at and to find what kind of brought me to life, because I worked in different departments, including like traffic, which is super boring. Then I also worked in, I believe I worked in legal as well, which wasn't that exciting. I worked, I mean, you name it, I was there, production management. I didn't really like it too much either. It was a lot of numbers. And then I moved my way into the music and talent department, and that's where I stayed the most of my career. And that's what led me to the next thing.
Wow. There's a lot of gems there. So I just want to kind of unwrap that for a second. So I want to talk about the importance of first impressions, right? So you talked about, Alex, in your case, you talked about you had a 2-week window, right? This was the time where you had to make the most out of it, where you were going to take the time to talk to as many people as you could to build a relationship and foster something that could, eventually make, get you there permanently. And I feel like that's super important for a lot of young folks, because I think people don't realize, they look at opportunities like, oh, this is going to come again. And, you made it because you were like, you had a goal in mind, like, I'm going to get this job, and you did it. And you didn't just work there. You worked the building, like you talked to all these different people. So I just want to make that a point as a lesson learned for a lot of young music professionals or creative professionals. Like, take the initiative to learn the building, speak to different people, and make your impression known. And I want to kind of pass it over to Gaby. In your case, obviously you had an internship, but that didn't necessarily transition to a job. But whatever you did at the internship made a positive impression with the recruiter. So impressions are super important. And I think for a lot of young folks, don't take, your internships for granted, because in your case, Gaby, it came full circle with your job fair. And, these are just two different tales where it all came back to the same point, where you have people now that are in this case at the job championing you to like work at these different departments and so forth and supporting you. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, it's great rep. It's perfect.
Yes, super point that out. So during your time, y'all were together at MTV. You also talked to Gaby about working at different departments. I just want to also point that out too, for a lot of people that are trying to figure out what their purpose is and what is going to drive them every day. I know in your case, Alex, you already knew when you're 8, but for some folks, it's about really trying things, and just kind of seeing what you don't like. And that's super important, because I think we pigeonhole ourselves sometimes and say like, hey, this is what I want to do. And I think in your case, you're able to like try different things, which was good for your career. And for some folks, it just comes naturally with production. Like, this is what I wanted to do, I'm gonna stick to it. And it's just kind of having those two options, so you can kind of see the two perspectives from two different people that at least line them up into places where they do what they love what they're doing now. So I just wanted to say that. So during this time, I always tell like a lot of young folks, so when it came to just like women in entertainment and in the creative space, we talked about Girls Gone Boss, but during that time, who did y'all lean to, in addition to each other? Did you have any mentors? Were there any women that helped kind of like shaped like, your confidence? Because I always want to point that out.
Well, I think, the HR representative, Maria, and also Alina, who were part of the HR team, they weren't per se like a mentor that, like a typical mentor that you would think of, but I think they were definitely pivotal in both of our careers. They really believed in us. They really kept us top of mind for opportunity. And that's valuable, especially from like a woman to woman. It's amazing that doors would open because they had us top of mind. But I just want to mention too, we did the work. We fostered the relationship. It wasn't that they were coming knocking at our door. I remember constantly going to Maria's office, like, hey, Maria, a month from now, this position, I'm going to leave. Do you know of anything else is coming up? Just wanted to give you the heads up just in case, so that you can keep me top of mind. And that was the work that we were doing constantly. Sometimes for a whole entire year, I was at her office, like, oh my God, where do I go next? She's like, don't worry, I think this is opening up. Like, so fostering that relationship was real important for me. I think those women were so important to our lives and our career in MTV. And they really saw in us the leader that we are today. Because even when they started developing programming for the employees within MTV, they did, it was called Somos. It was an organization that basically the employees create programming for the employees to like, motivate the, everyone, and to also bring, morale and stuff. So Maria thought about me and Alex to be
Wow.
the leaders. Some of the well, it was other people, but she was like, "Oh, Gaby and Alex, you're gonna be leaders." And we created amazing things for like Hispanic Heritage Month. We did events for the company. We brought in speakers. We brought in the editor-in-chief of Billboard, Leila Cobo, to come talk to the staff, to do like a book review. We gave books to everyone. So she really allowed us to shine and also use our leadership skills in other areas. So I think that was really important. And then throughout my stay in MTV, I had amazing male bosses that I really look up to this day, who are executives till now in the music industry. We always mention them in our podcast. We have, for me particularly, Mark Zimmett, Jose Tillan, there's Jesus Lara. There's so many amazing executives that really I assisted. I was their assistant. And then with Mark, I later became a manager with him, and I learned so much from him. He used to work with Clive Davis, and he's really been such a pivotal person that whenever I have to make really tough decisions in business, the first person I go to is Mark. So, and then I also see them as leaders, and I think leaders, we show people by example, and all I could do was just watch them do the work in meetings and conversations, during phone calls, and I would just study them, and I would literally be like watching them. How do they treat people? How do they talk in meetings? How do they lead the team? How do they motivate others? And they have been key, and they are some of the best leaders in the music industry today. Honestly, like not just as professionals, but as humans. And that's really ultimately who you want to be, is like a good human at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with Gabby. I had the exact same experience. I think that Maria and Alina were women that held that door open for us. We did do a lot of the work. We were very annoying and persistent, but in a very good and positive way. And I think that it showed how much passion we had. Therefore, they trusted us and they knew that we could get the job done. I didn't have any female mentors. I had male mentors. I had some of the same mentors that Gabby has. Mark Simmet, Sean Saylor, Josh Greenberg. They were great mentors of mine. They really were able to help me go to the next level. They put me in positions for me to be able to grow within the organization. And till this day, we're great friends. They still continue to mentor us whenever we need anything. They're there for us. They're incredible, brilliant creatives in the industry. And now I'm lucky that where I'm working at currently at Zumba, I work with a lot more women than I do men. And I'm finally finding that female mentorship that I've been looking for over the past 20 years. And I'm learning so much that I came to a point in my career that I didn't think I could learn that much more on how to be a leader. But these women are just so brilliant, and every day they truly amaze me, and I soak it all in and I take it in, and I'm like becoming them, because I listen to, like Gabby said, everything that they say, the way that they lead meetings, and they're really honestly helping me shape my career even broader and even more. Like, it's really amazing, and I'm very, very happy that I can finally say, like, there's really a great female mentor in my life right now.
That's super important to hear. A lot of great takeaways and lessons learned in both conversations. So I'm gonna dive into it in a second. So I think you mentioned Gabby and Alex in terms of being proactive, right? Being in Maria's office all the time, and that's super important. Like y'all, especially the audience here, like there's going to be opportunities going to be given to you, but it's like once you enter the door, it's up to you to stay there, right? To stay in the building. And y'all were like there every month, and being proactive enough to say like, hey, our gig is wrapping up. What are some opportunities can we tap into is super key. So don't take a passive approach. Just because you're in the building doesn't guarantee you more opportunities. Make sure you're proactive and stay on, and continue to stay hungry. I love the fact that you talked about just also the fact that you have some great men that were also great mentors as well. So shout out to all the amazing men from the company, because I also want to highlight that. And it's important for men to champion women at their workspace, because they need that. It's not just women, but it's men as well, and you need that both. So I obviously commend that, and I also pushed for that, especially for our organization and for like the music and creative industry as a whole. So I just want to point that out. And then 3, you talked about just like reaching a space where you're in a leadership position. 2 things I want to point out is that there's no shortage of learning, right? I think for you, Alex, you talked about like you thought you couldn't learn more, but you have. And being in our positions where we're still leaders, that there's so much opportunity to still learn more. So I just want to say that for the folks that are like more senior positions, like don't act like you all know everything. There's always more to learn. So I love that mindset. And then secondly, in regards to leadership, I'm big on this: lead by example, right? You don't realize how the people that work with you are literally just like mirroring what you're doing, and they only see you as a reference because they don't know any better. So from the way you talk to people to the way you treat people, that's going to rub off the right way, hopefully. So hopefully that can inspire more folks to just, like I said, not just say things, but lead by example. So I just want to point that out. Super key. So fast forward, we talked about, your stories in terms of like, you loving broadcasting and production. We fast forward where, you know, um, Alex's dad is driving to these different places, trying to get her gigs. Gaby is going through internships, comes back, is able to like, and y'all are able to meet and cross paths. You create Somos, which is really cool, right? And for like programming internally. So fast forward, where does that where does the inspiration for Girls Gone Boss start? Because I feel like that for me, for a lot of like the women, but also the entrepreneurs that want to create a space, like I want to share that story. So how did that come together?
Gabby had actually moved to LA, and she had just come back and started working at Warner. I was still at Viacom at that point, and I had the idea of creating a podcast. Now, little did I know that Gabby also had the exact same idea. And coincidentally, one day I just texted her. We worked like probably only a few blocks away from each other. So I asked her if she wanted to meet for lunch. She said yes. And we just started talking, and we both had the same idea that we wanted to do something else. We wanted to to reach women. We wanted to help women. We feel like we're here to service people. And we wanted to do something with the knowledge that we had and help others. And we started to talking, and we decided to create Girls Gone Boss from one day eating sushi at Subiche. So that's literally like how it just came to be. And then from there, it took us about, I want to say, 8 months to almost a year of brainstorming and just like really trying to figure out exactly our format and what we wanted to do, with a podcast and creating a logo and just getting the right concept together. And that's where Girls Gone Boss gave birth. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, when she came to me with that, I honestly, I've always, like I said, I've been in broadcasting for like so long. I've always loved talking. I love talking to people, and I wanted to just start my own thing. And when she told me that she was down to do it, I was like, perfect. And working with Alex has been such a, honestly, amazing, because we, like I said, we're like the yin to our yang. She's obviously a queen of production, all the tech stuff that I'm normally not that keen with. She takes care of. And so we really balance each other. We bring like our different skill set to the table very well to marry it together. I'm more the creative. I mean, she's creative as well, but I'm more like the marketing, the social media, the like, event planning, but she's really good at everything else. She's very organized. And also, I feel that it was the right timing to start the podcast, because like I said, it wasn't so saturated at the time. And
Right.
we felt there was like a niche that we could fill, like a little bit. It was like nothing was happening in the area that we really wanted for the audience we wanted to capture. So
Right.
it was a perfect timing to start it. And now I feel like we just want to take it to that next level, and we're still learning on how to perfect it and give better content to our listeners, and also to grow our brands. to monetize. You know, there's like a lot of things that we need to keep doing to grow as a brand.
Yeah, I love to hear that, and the fact that Alex, you mentioned it took 8 months is just realistic, right? Because I just want to just say that it takes time to a lot of the ideas that you're formulating doesn't happen overnight, and for a lot of young folks that are really excited about an idea, don't get discouraged because if it doesn't happen or launch it that week. I think we get like, oh wait, we got this idea, we got to launch it, and this has to happen on Friday. And if it doesn't, the world's going to end. It's over. So talk about that process between you and Gaby. Just the different iterations from like creating the logo to finding your voice and just who like understanding who your audience is and how important that is, especially in the that creative process. Because like I said, we put a time, I think a lot of people, including myself in the beginning, put a time limit. I'm like, it takes time to create really dope things.
Yeah, we didn't actually have a timeline in place. We knew we wanted to do things correctly, and we wanted to make sure that our branding was going to be what it is that we had envisioned, right? So working together with other creatives, trusting people to work with us to make our vision come to life within the logo, and all of our marketing assets was really essential to us. So we surround ourselves with a great network of people and peers that we know, and we reach out to them, ask questions, and work together with them in order to make things happen. The 8-month process was basically because we were full-time working. We were very busy, and we were trying to meet at least once a week for a few hours to kind of iron out ideas and put together our format, what exactly it is that we wanted to talk about, how we were going to be able to have a successful podcast together. And then also just figuring out how to work the equipment. We weren't familiar with that type of information. We didn't know anybody that had a podcast. We didn't really have any point of reference. It was very new at that point. There wasn't much out there. If you Googled any information, there really wasn't anything. So it was
Right.
tasking. It was a lot of homework, and it was a lot of patience. But that's how we started. And then we were ready to launch in April of, I don't even, 2016, 2017
Wow.
point. And that was our trajectory.
Yeah, and honestly, I think you said it all. It was just basically trying to figure out who this girl was that was going to be our listener. We really wanted to target women, but it's funny enough, we have a lot of loyal listeners that are men, including one of our mentors, Mark. He
Wow.
listens to all the episodes religiously. So there is, it's funny enough, I feel like men also want to, are interested in this type of content because
Yeah.
we interview different women. We also felt it was important not to just stick to entertainment because that's obviously our niche, media. We wanted to talk to women from all walks of life. We've interviewed women that are lawyers, women that are psychologists, restaurant owners, a lot of entrepreneurs, because the entrepreneurial mind is so different, and honestly, we take so much gems from people that have the courage to be risk takers and to just go for it, and no matter what, survive. And we talk to
Right.
so many women like that, and those stories are so pivotal, so important for our listeners, because we always want to have takeaways. It's important to like hear lessons learned, right? What have we learned from all of this? And so that we can feed that next generation some of the tools, or give them some of the tools, so that maybe they don't have to take the long road this
Right.
time.
I love to hear that, and the fact that you started in 2016, and in a time where podcasts weren't necessarily popular, where now everyone is doing podcasts, and it's great. But you were able to build a community, and I love the fact that your audience isn't just women. Um, so I think that's super important. So with that in mind, like I'd love y'all for you, Gabby and Alex, so kind of plug in like what are you excited about for 2021, and what can the digital art community, which we're gonna have all your information in the description, expect for some programming this year.
We've only had one man on the entire show, and so we kind of wanted to honor some of the guys that the men that we mentioned here. So actually tomorrow we are going to be interviewing one of our mentors, Ortega, who's an amazing producer, executive. He actually executive produces the Latin Grammys and a lot of the
Wow.
award shows out there. And he's one of our go-to guys when we really need that career mentorship. So we are bringing in some key executives that have made a change in our lives to get their perspective as leaders, and as well as answer some questions that you would ask a mentor, so that you have access to those gems that you necessarily wouldn't have access to. So we're excited about that, kind of like shifting the conversation into more male perspective. I think we all can learn from all of the amazing male leaders out there, like yourself, Drew. So we're excited about that. We are excited also about learning more about podcasting. We are 4 years in, 5 years in, but we still want to learn more about how do we monetize our brands? How do we grow more? Is there services or products that we want to incorporate into our branding and into our business? Because at the end of the day, it is a business. And so we're trying to shift over our thought and our strategy more into the business side. I feel like Alex and I have really perfected the content side of it and the production side of it, even though with pandemic, we've had to readjust the way we do our things. Before, we used to have like an engineer, a sound engineer, and our sound was like super pristine. Now we just kind of roll with the punches. But we really just want to focus more on the business side of it and grow that, because we really do see there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of growth to be had, especially financially. So, and we know this could be a very profitable business, and we're ready to play.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And just for a lot of folks that, even in our case with the Digitalog, 4 years of programming, you reach a certain point where we have to figure out how to sustain. Yes. And and sustain is more so in a place where how the community can thrive even more, because you can only do it for so long, where, the free time that we have, or, all the extra time outside of work is dedicated towards these things. And I love the fact that you talked about expanding your audience and kind of the stories with men. And I think those are two important things to kind of point out, like expanding your audience, one, and when you hit an inflection point, being able to like learn how to monetize from your community. And when I say monetize, this is something we're learning too, is like how your community can reinvest into the brand, because it serves them.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think it's important, if you are a creator out there and you're trying to start a podcast or whatever it may be, to build that trust with your community, that credibility, because that's when you are going to get those loyal fans, and those people that will invest in your services. Because at the end of the day, we want to turn a hobby into a business. Like, it can't just be a hobby forever, because we are very business oriented women, and anybody that's entrepreneurial goes into something for an ROI, and we have to just keep it 100. We love doing it. We're passionate about it, but we also, there's tons of podcasters that do this for a living, and that would be a dream, and they're very profitable, like I said. So let's learn how to be profitable. It's like kind of like the idea for 2021 is like, how do we service our community in the best way possible with our knowledge? Again, between Alex and I and our guests, there's like a fountain of knowledge. There's so much that we can provide for you. And so we just have to learn how to figure out the monetization part.
Right. Absolutely. And before we wrap up, I just want to also talk about just, as you build and grow your community, what have you learned from your community, just based off like the importance of feedback and importance of like, because comments and just like, like responding to like DMs, and what have you learned from them? Because I feel like there's so many clues in the comments and the way that they share, and kind of identifying like who those like super core fans are. What I've learned, especially with the Digitalog, like who are those favorite, super members. But what have you learned with the community? Because I think that's super important when you're building a platform. that serves
I
others.
learned that they're all hungry to learn more. They're hungry to connect. I also know that the new age, like the people that are entering the industries now are more bold. They will get in your DM and they will ask for time with you. I've had multiple people do Zoom calls with me to pick my brain or talk about my beginnings. How did I start? I learned that they're gonna go get it, and I love that because this is the content that we do is exactly for those people that are not afraid to take that risk, that are not afraid to go into the DMs. We constantly tell our listeners in our episodes, like, don't be afraid to hit up people. Sometimes it'll be a blank, nobody will answer, but sometimes, the same way we do with our guests, I will cold pitch so many people, and there's been amazing guests that I got that way. So I learned that. I've learned that a lot of them go through the same thing. A lot of them suffer from a lot of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome has been the theme throughout every conversation we've had. It's been the theme through, even with Alex and I, we've had to fight through that, and
Right.
and it's interesting to know that it's, we can shift that if we just kind of like think about it in a different way, and if we use our content to help empower and give tools to people so that they're more confident in business. I feel the confidence breeds better leadership. So that's kind of like what we've learned, and we want to keep empowering them. We want to keep giving them more tools, so we keep asking them questions. It's important to engage with your community. We are working on creating a Facebook group. I think Facebook groups are important in order to kind of feed into your community, and
Oh,
for your community that are like-minded, they can engage and interact with each other. So that's another tool that we're going to start using this year as well to kind of feed our core audience.
I love that. So I just wanted to point that out just because, a lot of folks, when they start something, I think they always have an idea in mind, but a lot of the content that we create is for the community because we have to ask,
Mm-hmm.
like, what is our why? Like, why are we doing this? We're doing it for
Mm-hmm.
y'all. So I think the point I'm making is like making sure you're listening to the people that are consuming your content, like what they
Mm-hmm.
like, why they're doing it. And to your point earlier, these are bosses. That's why they're going on your DMs, wanting to like talk to you and offer
Mm-hmm.
that, and really giving them that confidence to take those extra steps, and not feel afraid to to go for what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to point that out. So
Mm-hmm.
as we wrap up, we always like to talk about one lesson learned. So I'm gonna kick it off to Alex. What is one L or lesson learned for you that you want to kind of share with the audience before we wrap up this really dope episode?
So I think that the one key gem that I can give all of your listeners is to be super patient, comfortable with rejection. That is key. You have to be comfortable with rejection, but you have to also be incredibly persistent. Technical skills are not necessary for success if you are passionate and hungry to learn. There's also, it's super important to network, meet the right people, and ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. I'm going to not stress that enough, but ask the questions because somebody will have the answer for you. So that's the best lesson that I've learned. And I think that it'll take you very far if you're able to pinpoint all those things together.
Love that. Super key. Patience, persistence, and ask questions.
Yes.
Again, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I love that, Alex. Thank you. How about you, Gabby?
Um, all of that is beautiful. I love it. I think that's super important what Alex just said. And in addition to have a have a positive outlook, be positive, have a great personality, be somebody that people want to be around. Trust me, if I've worked with so many interns, so many people, and the ones that stand out are the ones that are always willing to go far and beyond, who have a great attitude, who are on time. All those little things really make a difference. And people want to be around people that are, light and fun, but also get their stuff done, and also have a hustler spirit. Know that nobody's gonna come give it to you. You gotta go get it. So and know that the next person is working even harder for where you're at. So you need to go far and beyond. and you need to do the best job you can because you only get that one chance. And do it with a smile, do it with great attitude, because people want to be around people like that.
Wow. I mean, yeah. I mean, between, you know, the persistence and patience and asking questions to, you know, just have attitude is so key
So
because
key.
we work in a team sport. It doesn't matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't be part of an environment where you talked about a positive outlook, it's hard because we deal with challenging things every day. Not say like this is like life changing, but I think in the sense where it's gonna we're approached with being able to solve problems, right? And it's like the way that you approach it and the attitude that you approach it. Like, all right, so what are our options? Like, what are our resources versus complaining or breaking down? And I think those things are super key, especially as you grow in your career
Mm-hmm.
and having the hustler spirit that you spoke about
Mm-hmm.
and being able to like get the most of those opportunities because they're not given to everybody,
At
you know.
all.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
Lessons learned with Alex and Gabby, Girls Gone Boss, episode 26. Digilog fam, I can't thank y'all enough for tuning in. This was a really dope episode for season 2. We had a chance to like really get a glimpse of these incredible entrepreneurs and bosses in their own right. Can't wait to like share more of the stuff that they're programming on the Digilog. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We're gonna have all the information in the description. But stay tuned for more incredible stories from our community, and we'll see you for episode 27. So stay tuned.